Here we go. Um, Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hope everybody has had a great week uh, and you're prepared to get your week on to a great start no matter where you're at. Just remember, if you're still breathing, you're still in the fight. I'm here with both a close friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Michael K. Blanchard. Um, and we are here to talk to you about something that we are extremely passionate about. We just completed and published an academic position paper on school security and versus wraparound services and how all of that ties into the current state of the community and what needs to be done moving forward. This is not Dr. Blanchard's first time on. Some of you have definitely had a chance to hear him speak and share his insight previously. It has been a pleasure of mine to call him a friend and an honor to call him a colleague. We challenge each other. The old adage, iron sharpens iron, definitely applies here. We don't always agree, but our disagreements are highly respectful because we have that type of respect for one another. And that's what I would love to see among our men, um, period. I actually believe one of the strongest uh, measurements of a man is his ability to pull other men together and put egos aside to accomplish common goals. To me, that is one of the banyans of being a true leader. And I think we're more on a beating our chest than we are about uh, working together to accomplish a common goal. But anyway, I'm going. Dr. Blanchard holds a doctorate degree in education, and he literally specializes in student retention and wraparound services and how that works. And student retention is extremely important, and we're going to discuss why student retention is important and why student persistence is important. And those are two different things, and Dr. Blanchard will probably explain the difference. But those are two different things. But the importance of why we did the work, how it applies to us as a race of people, and what needs to move forward, and some of our suggestions. We're going to talk about that. And we may get off into some other discussions just organically. We have these long conversations. We've been doing it for years now. And so we have a natural flow of things. And I told him that's kind of how I want to do things, is flow naturally. I'm going to allow Dr. Blanchard to introduce himself so that you can get an idea of why his presence and his insight is so important in this matter. And then we'll come back around and we'll get started on the conversation. Dr. Blanchard, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, just a little bit about myself. I'm from South Bend, Indiana. Um, I have been in law enforcement education for approximately 36 years. I have taught in higher education for the last 9, primarily with community colleges and non-traditional learners. I have been involved in wraparound services actually since 2013, helping to create wraparound services and worked in wraparound services in a community college. And so basically what wraparound services is everything that you do to help a student persist and grow. And so it's very important to me because I've worked with non-traditional students. A lot of my students can range from 18 all the way up to 70, even older than you and I. Right. And so that's been very important to me. I took it on after helping start a wraparound services and service in South Bend, Indiana at Ivy Tech Community College, and working with one of my colleagues by the name of Irene Britt, who was my criminal justice department chair. And wraparound services includes a lot of different things. It can be tutoring, it can be coaching, it can be food dealing with food discrepancies. Anything that you do to help a student persist. It can be dealing with mental health, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to do an article with you, because we looked at it from both sides. We looked at it from the security law enforcement side, and then we also looked at it from the wraparound services, mental health side, because mental health is also part of wraparound services and coaching, and making sure that kids have enough to eat, because if a child comes to school and doesn't have enough to eat, they can't focus on learning. If a child has a lot of different things going on at home, we know we have some very, everybody, both Black and white communities have dysfunction going on at home, and they bring those things to school. And so we got to make sure that not only teachers, but security and all the rest of the staff in K through 12 are able to identify those things, assess those things, and bring wraparound services, solutions to those families, so that those students can persist to graduation and can show growth. And I think most of us would agree that K through 12 has a lot of growth needed by staff and teachers. We have an aging teaching population, something we haven't talked about. Most of the teachers are your and my age. Technology is passing us by. Students have a greater expectation of using technology. They have a greater expectation of the pedagogy that we use in order to interact with them. And sometimes age can be a barrier as a teacher. We never really talked about that either. So there's a whole realm of things that includes wraparound service. You got to be able to connect with them.
Right.
And that's why we talk about teachers and all of that being having the same background as students, having the same lineage and culture and lived experiences. All of that's very important. Even in law enforcement, we tend to focus on diversity education instead of hiring those people that already have those backgrounds and skills and can reach our students,
Right. And I think a point that you make there is immensely important, where you talk about diversity education versus simply having a diverse hiring process that mimics or mirrors the demographic. And it comes to a question that came up. I didn't, and I don't think that in your portion you addressed it in the paper. I know that I didn't, but it came up, and I actually start to question different people just to get an idea of how on I was in my thinking when I went through this in this particular area. And that is, as a Black male, what grade was I in before I encountered my first Black male teacher? And it was 7th grade for me.
Yeah.
So I went through my entire elementary and into middle school before I ever encountered a Black male teacher.
Right.
And this was obviously, I born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, and I'm literally at the end of the 70s before I get my encounter of a male person. I got 2 in 1 year, my woodshop teacher and my history teacher. And both of them played an immense role in my development. It was Mr. Brewer, who was my history teacher, who used to be a college professor, and said that he was very upset with the fact that most of his students that got there who looked like him weren't prepared. So he came down to a lower level to influence the lives of a few. And he had some real simple principles. Punctuality is a step to success. Obedience is a step to success. Preparedness is a step to success. And he hammered it into you. And he expected you to practice them. And he held you accountable, and there were consequences. Mr. Joseph was the woodshop teacher who was cool. Everybody thought he was the flyest cat on the planet, but he kicked game to you. Real life, hey, this is what it's going to be like being a Black man. Right. This is why you need to do X, Y, Z. Don't waste this opportunity type thing. And they played a role. But it was the 7th grade before I encountered them. And it was the 9th grade before I encountered a Black male in an administrative role. So the thing is, you can take a non-Black and give them all the cultural diversity training you want to give them. They still haven't lived the experience.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And like you said, I mean, we're like a unicorn. Um, Higher education and K through 12. You know, I work for a school district down in South Florida, and there are very few black male teachers. You know, even throughout the country, you know, there are very few black male teachers. There are very few black male administrators. So that's very important that our young black males see those folks, and more importantly, that we have folks that are capable of reaching them. You know, because we can lay everything out there on what needs to be done, but you have to be able to execute it. You know, it's easy to say what needs to be done, you know, and put everything out there and talk about student persistence and talk about wraparound services. And a lot of our wraparound services, we do have them on paper, you know, we have them on paper. But as far as the execution, there's really little follow up. There's very little, you know, there's no software program or way of following up on these things to make sure that when you do engage a student, you know, there's follow up, you know.
And the thing is, I think that you did a great job of explaining what wraparound services are. What we did is we placed wraparound service in juxtaposition to the current security protocols in place. And one of the things that I discovered in my research is that the current security protocol and the spending on policing, and then even in some cases, the militarization of school grounds. And there are some educators who are even referring to it as prisons. Schools are becoming and mimicking more and more, becoming a mimicking mechanism of prison in appearance, in behaviors, in the way you come in, but even in the way that they're being taught. It's institutional, it's generalized, it doesn't acknowledge their own unique style of learning, and so much more. And so what we did is we placed it in juxtaposition. And the question I think that we asked at the beginning was, would the money, the 2.7, almost 3 billion that's spent annually on increasing police presence, would it be better spent on wraparound services that created an environment that would increase student persistence? And the understanding behind it, and I will allow you to elaborate, the understanding behind it was that we know that there are some pretty horrifying statistics that go along with not persisting. For instance, a young black male is 5 times more likely to go to prison if he doesn't complete high school. So it isn't just about getting a skill set, because you can get skill sets in other ways. It's about the other dynamics that are tied to not making it through school. And we're talking about self-esteem and a bunch of other things, but we're definitely talking about the negative consequences. Because, see, we also know that a white male with a high school diploma on a universal level in the U.S. out earns a black male with a bachelor's. So, okay, so these are all things working against us that we need to understand the importance. It's not that we are necessarily saying that the only route is through an academic career, but there are some very, very key elements and components that are directly tied to finishing at least high school.
Well, I'll give you an example of why that's important. When I came out of high school, you know, I was like you. I ran track and I played basketball, and I really didn't take academics that seriously. You know, I did well enough to stay on the basketball team and track team. So my senior year, my mother, who's 91 now, she takes me to the high school counselor, and we're talking about, you know, what I'm going to do after high school. And he basically tells my mother, well, Michael's not college material. You know, maybe you should think about some kind of trade or something like that. Well, you know how my mother is. She's probably like a lot like yours, where, you know, she didn't want to hear that, you know. And for a lot of reasons, I didn't put a lot into school at that time. But what wound up happening is my mother said, you know what? I don't want to talk to you anymore. Give me a black counselor. So the black counselor comes in, and the black counselor uh, was actually my track coach. And he basically said, well, I know of a program you can get in college in. Now, I would have never gotten that information had my mother not insisted on talking to a black counselor. The black counselor told my mother and I about a program called Groups, Indiana University Groups program. So what that did, Doc, was that allowed somebody like me that was only around 2.0 to go to college in the summer, take the 12 hours. If I get 2.5 or higher, then I come back for the fall on probation. After the first year of probation, then I'm automatically in. And so uh, if my mother doesn't insist on talking to that black counselor, and that black counselor is not there to tell me about that program, which coincidentally was a wraparound service program. That is a wraparound service program.
Right.
Anything that helps students grow and educationally. So, needless to say, I went on and graduated from IU. Went on to get a master's in business and the doctorate. But it just shows you how you know, if someone's not there, someone that looks like you, someone that has your lineage and culture, you know, how my life could have drastically been different if my mother would have just basically took what he said. Okay, my son's not college material. So
Right.
that actually, 1984 was actually my first introduction to what we call wraparound service today. I didn't know it at the time, but that's actually what it was. I've worked for Miami Job Corps. Job Corps is another wraparound service program.
Right.
As a police officer, I worked in the Police Athletic League, or what people commonly know as PAL Club. That's a wraparound service program that feeds kids, that introduces kids to sports and teamwork and leadership. And the kids, the hook is you think you're playing basketball and football and all that, but at the same time we're teaching you something. At the same time, there's a pre-test and a post-test to determine what your reading comprehension is and the level of reading that you have. Because, Doc, we know that if kids can't read and they can't comprehend what they're reading, then guess what? How can they learn anything else? Reading that's why we harp on reading so much. And the reading skills of our kids and the comprehension of our kids, they're very low. And if you can't read and you can't comprehend what you're reading, you can't learn math, science, or any other curriculum. You're stuck.
Right. And and the thing is, again, outside of just simply understanding that dynamic, you have to also understand that not only can you not learn on an academic scale when reading, you also have to understand that the average American only reads one book a year, but the top performers in this country or the top performers in the world read an average 4 books a month. Well, if you don't have good reading skills, you can't participate in that. Reading becomes a hassle, a challenge, an annoyance, monotonous, and so many other things. And you lose a strong mechanism that allows you to open doors for yourself. And that's what the beauty about being able to read is. You can literally go out and find the answers to your questions and to your challenges, even if someone else is withholding them.
Absolutely.
And so it's important that exists. Now, I want, for those people who aren't familiar with you, I want you to elaborate on the criminal justice side of things. You were a police officer, I think, for 10 years?
Yeah. And I was with Indianapolis Police Department for 10 years. And so the combination of working in law enforcement and education allowed me to see that, the connection between education and criminal justice, and how some of our young people get caught up in that. They get alienated at school. That was a big reason why I didn't learn, because, I didn't feel that anything pertained to me. When you're in school, you feel like African Americans are just spectators to history, that we just sat by and watched everybody else achieve and contribute to world civilization. And we basically were just, bystanders. And so when you go through school and you don't see any connection to your people in mathematics and science in social studies and psychology, and criminal justice. You're sitting there bored, and I have a lot of students that come to me sometimes and say, two things. I'm not interested because I don't see any connection between myself and what I'm going to do, what my purpose is. I don't see any connection to any of that. And I don't see any connection to my teacher. They'll tell you, hey, I'm not learning because my teacher doesn't like me, or, and that's a big thing, And so we need to be able to identify those things. And if a student needs another teacher, get them another teacher, get them a teacher that can connect with them, And again, we need to be hiring those type of teachers. Like I said earlier, we have an aging teaching force. And if we don't address it soon, what kind of teachers are we going to have in the next 25 to 50 years, when a lot of these teachers retire? And, we have a lot of teachers that have been purged. We know back during the Obama administration, we lost a lot of Black teachers because of the charter schools and the private schools. Every time they peel off students from us, what does that do? That shrinks our budget. And who do you think the first teachers are to go? First teachers are to go are our teachers.
Right.
And so, we have to get involved. We have to actually look at bringing in the best, because, my parents and your parents went into education because it was separate and unequal. And that was the few professions that Black folks could go in was teaching. And that was a horrible thing. You became a teacher. And I have a lot of teachers in my family, and they brought me up to know that teaching was a great profession. And they brought me up to know that one of the reasons why they even went into education was because it was one of the few places when we had our own school system that we could actually go in and had some control over. But, of course, we don't have that now. School boards control the schools now, and many of us don't even participate in that. We don't go to school board meetings. We don't go to parent-teacher conferences and that type of thing. So we don't get too involved in that. And that's something we have to get involved with. Either we have to get involved in it or we have to teach our own kids, which, we brought out in the article that a lot of parents are deciding to teach their own kids. I got quite a few calls about the article from people who are doing wraparound services. They said, hey, that's exactly what we're doing. We're tutoring. We're dealing with food scarcity, which is very big. Food scarcity is very big. Yeah. Some of our kids, the only meal they get is a hot breakfast and a hot lunch at school.
Right. On that note, Michael Jordan, another one of our friends who is actually probably my closest friend, and here in Houston with me, he started out as a mentee years ago that just came into my world and said, hey, I need to learn from you, and would not go away. And we have developed a relationship. He and his family is my family now. We do a lot of things together. He has an organization called Enduring Hearts, where he deals with a lot of things like scarcity with food and homelessness and things of that, feeding the homeless and doing a bunch of things. And Mike came to me and said, hey, man, I need you. I went to a school and I wanted to borrow their auditorium to do a fundraising event. And they started talking to me about the problems that their children were having. He says, I need you to come in so you can see this. I can't even explain it to you. So I go sit down with the principal, two of the counselors, and come to find out that it's in Southeast Houston, in a place called South Park. School's called Hartman. And there's these apartment buildings that are right by the school that have been condemned by the city. There's no running water, no electricity, but there are families squatting there.
Wow.
Literally in walking distance to the school, and children are coming to school from that environment. He says, man, last year I came and I raised all this. I collected all this food in a food drive to bring and give to these kids, not knowing that they couldn't take it home because they had no refrigerator to put it in, no stove to cook it on. And so the food just went to waste in the house if it wasn't non-perishable. He said, so I found out about this and I need you. So we go there and we work with the school for the next couple of years. But what it showed me is what children in this world, in a country that's supposed to be the country with the greatest opportunity for success on the entire planet, we still have children going to school hungry. We still have children who are taking the struggles of their parents to school with them. Okay, that's the dysfunction in the home that you were talking about. Mom and dad are struggling just to get bills paid. You got situations where we don't have lights. I can't study at night because there are no lights in the home. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm bringing all of that stress because kids have a way of bearing the stress and the struggle and the responsibility of what their parents are doing. They take on a part of that. Like they're at school trying to figure out how they're going to help mom at 12 and 13. This is a middle school. At 12 and 13, they're at school thinking how they're going to help mom get through it, how they're going to help mom and dad pay the bills, how we're going to get into a real apartment where we have lights and running water. And nobody is providing the wraparound services on a consistent level to do that. But we're putting $3 billion into school security. Now, and here comes the other part to the question I asked you about being a police officer. Your experience as a police officer, outside of the research we did, where we definitely pointed to the fact that it has no true consequence in the areas where the police presence is most prevalent, because school shootings aren't happening in those areas. There are other forms of violence, but the police presence isn't actually helping. But as a former police officer and all the challenges that you ran into, all the challenges that you ran into when you were trying to reach out into the community and be a positive force from that side of the fence, can you see how a police presence 30 years later is doing 20, 30 years later is doing any good in the school?
Absolutely. Can I tell you something? Back in the 70s in Indianapolis, Black investigators had a 100% clearance rate on homicides. And one of the things they told me that was that helped was that we also had a strong PAL club. So the fact that we had a strong PAL club with Black officers that were dealing with those issues that you talk about, food scarcity, helping mom or dad get a job, all the things that the economic side, the mental health side. When you have strong PAL clubs with Black officers involved, you have a lower homicide rate. You have a lower crime rate. So, I spent 3 years in PAL Club, where that's all I did. 3 years of the 10 years I was with Indianapolis, that's what I did. And I had a greater impact working in PAL Club doing what I was doing than what I was actually doing on the street as an officer, because as an officer, you're dealing with the after effect of it. You're not being proactive about it. You're being reactive. And so that's where we need to be. My hometown of South Bend just received $100 million to use to help students who have fallen behind even more due to COVID. They received $100 million. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to write the article. And this happened after we wrote the article. I actually posted it. And my concern is, what's going to be the return on investment of that $100 million? Now, South Bend is only a city of 120-some thousand people. It also makes me wonder what the larger school systems got, like Houston and Miami and Chicago, which is the third largest public school system. I know here in South Bend, they're going to give some of it away to non-for-profits and all of that. And I kind of, shake my head a little bit at that, because I don't know that non-for-profits are capable of getting student growth. If trained teachers who have been teaching for 30, 40 years are not able to get student growth and are not able to reach our kids, I don't know how non-for-profits would be able to. So, overall, the question is, we wanted to pose to people is to look at the enormous amount of spending, as we said, $2.7 billion, and to presuppose wouldn't it be better, or would it be better? That's for the community to decide. Would it be better to use that money and deal with being proactive and identifying students who do need help before they become a problem? Because as you said, they're bringing everything to school with them. Teachers are having to redirect students. Teachers can't even get to the curriculum. Even if they are a highly effective teacher, they're spending hours upon hours that takes away from instructional hours. They're spending hours dealing with, uh, food scarcity. They're having to feed kids in the classroom. They're having to deal with, like you said, domestics that are going on at home. No lights on at home. No internet. As we know now, a lot of the students weren't logging in. You have a lot of students that simply failed over the last 2 years because they didn't have internet,
right,
to even do it. So you had a lot of students that weren't even logging in.
Right.
I've heard. I don't know what you're hearing, but some school systems, I hear that 40% of the students are failing right now. So that's why they're throwing all this money out there to deal with that, to try to, the last 2 years have been, shot pretty much. The last 2 years were COVID, because a lot of the students have been at home. Some log on, some don't. I've heard even as high as 60% of the kids weren't logging on and doing their work.
Right.
And what could parents do? You had some school systems that wanted to lock up the parents, or to fine the parents for kids not logging on. They're at work, So there were a lot of things going on in the last couple of years. But from talking with people, there are a lot of people out there, and as we say, they're doing it on their own dime. They're doing wraparound services on their own dime. Some of them I've talked to are using grant money, and I know how we both feel about using grant money. A lot of restrictions to that, and you can be shut down at any time. And I just wish we would get to the point. I wish we would get to the point, Doc, where we would start supporting those. If you don't want to do the work, support somebody who is.
Right.
I don't have a problem. Everybody has a different calling in life. Everybody has a different purpose. Everybody's not Dr. Rick. Everybody's not Dr. Blanchard, but we can all do something. And one of the things I try to do is I try to spread whatever money I have out amongst people who are doing the work. If I'm not doing the same work as you, I'm going to support you in whatever way that I can. But we need more people to do that, because there are people out here doing really good work. And unfortunately, the people that we talk about who can reach our kids, who can get academic growth in them, who can reach them, unfortunately, those aren't the people that are getting the money.
Right. And that goes back to your concern about nonprofit organizations. Is in truth, nonprofit organizations, as a general rule, has become the cipher that ciphers money out of the hands of, or out of the path, or the conduit into the community, out of the hands of those who are actually doing work. And they put up the good facade. They have the PR campaigns. They have all of the things that makes it look at what we're doing. The photo ops that actually make those photo ops that they do, where they show up, take the pictures with the kids, take the pictures with the homeless, take the pictures, all that, and then they disappear. Makes it difficult for people like myself who actually go in and have to build relationships with these kids and these families. And all they've ever seen is people come in and take pictures with them. That's why when people say we need more pictures with you doing what you're doing so we can see it, I'm like, I'll rather figure it out than to put these kids in a situation where, okay, take this picture from me so I can prove I actually came here today. The bottom line is I've been doing this long enough where people should know. And, there are some pictures that have been taken out without me knowing it, or videos shot without me knowing it. And I have them. People have sent them to me, say, hey, Doc, show them this, show them that. Right. And so I put a little compilation together. But the idea is the nonprofit organizations, because they have the 501(c)(3) classification, they can get people to send a bunch of money without ever having to actually dedicate that. A lot of it goes to salaries. Yeah. And I'm not beyond someone getting paid to put in work. But
80%, 80% of the money that goes into those not-for-profits goes into salaries. And you bring up a good point. You and I had a discussion several years ago where you told me, I'll never forget, you told me, and because I think we had the conversation about where people bring in people like you or me or an athlete to come in, and that's almost like a wraparound service in of itself. See me, I did it, you can do it. But I remember you telling me, and I feel the same way, that if I can't stay there and take your hand and show you how to get to where you need to be, the kind of wraparound services that's needed is long term.
Right.
It's not just some little cute program where we teach you some little sayings and all of that and try to build up your self-esteem. It's the actual showing them how to do it, actually showing them. You have to be with them over a long period of time, Doc. And that's what I learned when I was in the police athletic league. It was the consistency of seeing those kids every day and building a relationship with them. And that's what wraparound services is, why wraparound services is needed. It needs to be that type of wraparound service where you show them, not only tell them how to be successful and how to persist, but then bring the resources so that they're able to and it's hard work. This is what people don't understand. It's hard work. And I know because I've watched you for years. It's hard work going in there every day and working with our folks because, some of our folks have some serious problems. And I know you and I know that. And it requires resources,
Right.
It requires long-term resources and long-term commitment from folks. And many folks are not as committed as others are. The people the people that I've talked to that are doing it on their own dime, they're very committed because they're doing the work and reaching in their own pocket and financing it. So they're committed.
That's the case with the Odyssey Project. Black Men Lead, Rite of Passage Initiative, Restoring Ghetto's Forgotten Daughters, Music is Life program, Black Empowerment, Black Community Empowerment program. All of these have been done over the last 20 years, 95% funded by yours truly. I mentioned since 2005, we have yet to reach, I think we may have in the past couple of months reached $10,000 total in outside contributions and donations.
Wow.
And everybody has, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Right. Get a nonprofit. Now I have the IRS all in my business. I have all of this, and I've seen too many people have great work going in the community and forgot to dot an I across a T.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On the tax side of thing, and end up paying with their freedom. They weren't screwing the community. They just were trying to do work, and they wanted to control things and the flow of funds as it was needed. And you should be able to do that. What I've been able to do, and it's been hard because again, I can only do what my resources do. And I have a family. I'm a husband and a father of 13. It ain't like I'm just sitting up by myself.
Doc, you bring up a good point. I was talking with a gentleman who was my Uber driver when I left Florida a couple months ago, and he was a former convict. And he told me, after he found out what I do and that I was an educator and all of that, he made it a point to tell me that when he was in prison, the teachers that could connect, this is in prison now, the teachers that could and were connecting with the prisoners and getting them to get their education and encouraging them, those were the ones that were removed. And he said he even had a warden tell him that, I can't, if I allow teachers like this to stay, then that's my job security. I need you to come back. He actually had a warden tell him that.
Well, I mean, we heard Kamala Harris when she was Attorney General of California sit up and fight certain legislative proposals that would shorten sentences, that would prepare people, because in her words was, we need the free labor.
Right.
Okay. And, I'm not shocked because I've done my research on her, but that's a mindset. What you got to understand is prisons and the criminal justice system itself is a bureaucracy. The thing that bureaucracies are best at is preserving themselves. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily getting the best result on any particular thing, but making sure that there's a need for them to stay in play. Preparing prisoners in a way that reduces recidivism. Because see, in the state of Texas, I can tell you from the research I've done here that 73% of inmates that are released from prison will return within 3 years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that is pretty much universal around the United States in the research I've done. So what we're talking about is that's a constant flow of profit, a constant flow that ensures that everybody that has a job in that industry keeps a job. It's job security. Why are we going to interfere with job security? You're not going to get that from status quo institutions because it doesn't serve the interest of the economy as is.
Right.
We need a certain amount of people not to be successful in school because those are the ones most likely to be funneled into the private prison industrial complex, right, or into the school to prison pipeline. And so it's up to us to sit up and say, these are the things that we're going to do in order to increase student persistence, increase the success rate, and pro-socialize and racially socialize young blacks, especially young black males, because there's a target on their backs because the system is bit off them. You're talking about a group of people who make up a total of black men, about 6 to 7% of this nation's population. But we make up the majority of the population in prisons. We are a 38%, while the next largest percentage are whites at 35%.
Right.
Now, they make up a huge percentage of the population, and there are studies and statistics that show they're more criminal in behavior.
Right.
They're 5 times more likely to have drugs on them, but never stopped and searched.
Right.
All of these different things says, okay, we're targeting you.
Right.
We're going to protect their community, but we're going to police yours.
Mm-hmm.
2 totally different mindsets.
Absolutely.
The way you engage one another is going to be different. The level of trust between the community and the police department is going to be different. And all of these dynamics come into play in all of these encounters that we love to critique without understanding. And so when we looked at this, the thing was not only how important wraparound services were. It wasn't like we're saying we want to raid the coffers of a highly productive program to pay for wraparound services. We were able to look at it and say, this program isn't productive.
Right.
It's a good HR move. Look how safe we're making schools. But are they really safe? Because what we can tell you is down there in your school district where you are the head of security and what you do down there before you got there, the Parkland shooting, there were resource officers on campus when it happened. Guess where those resource officers were the entire time the shooting was going on? I'm pretty sure you know. They were outside. Right. They were outside and would refuse to go in.
Right.
So how did they make the place safe? Right. So again, but what has to also be understood is that wasn't an inner city school either. You know, that was a predominantly non-black school. So
right.
So your inner cities are dealing with other types of issues. That the inner city, there's a certain type of mindset and situation that normally leads to mass school shootings, and it doesn't normally develop in the minds of inner city students. Right. And I don't want to get too off into that. So, but I'm just saying that while you've had 200 and something mass shootings since Columbine, you're talking about Columbine was 22 years ago, and all these schools in America, it's only been 200. And I hate to say only in the sense, but we're talking data, not emotion. Data says it's rare. It's still rare. Only 300 and some schools, only 300 and some people have been killed.
Well, see, what it also reminds me, it also reminds me of, Doc, when you look at what happened, when you talk about emotion and how we throw money at things due to emotion, it kind of mirrors what we did with Homeland Security. It was a knee-jerk reaction. We hired people. We throw a lot. I mean, when they did an audit, and I'm sure you've seen it, the audit that they did on Homeland Security when they first started it back in 2001 up to now, I mean, we literally spent billions. And then after we spent billions, we walked everything back. We walked a lot of it back, you know. A lot of people that were hired back then were, hired really fast. They hired the wrong people, and they ended up walking a lot of those things and those policies back. And that's what we do. Like you said, we do things for political reasons. It looks good. It's smoke and mirrors. It gives you the illusion of security. But in all actuality, for example, there are other school systems that aren't spending as much money as some of the schools in Florida and some of the schools in California and Texas, where more school shootings happen because of the population in the larger school systems. They're not spending that much, but they're not having any issues either. And that shows you that it is a rarity. Indeed, it's a rarity that it happens. And so
Right.
It would be much better to use the wraparound services. And I've even heard other officers say that. Down in South Florida, I met a gentleman by the name of Major Nestruck, and they had a program in the 90s called the HOTS program, and it was called the Habitual Offender Trafficking System. And what they did was they went out into the community. This was by Broward County Sheriff's Department. And I just happened to run into this guy, and we started talking. And he told me about the program. And I said, well, what you were doing was wraparound services. He said, yes. And I said, wow, you were before your time. You were doing it in a police department doing it. Instead of a gang unit, it was HOTS program. So they got kids' parents jobs. They dealt with food scarcity. They dealt with mental health. They did a lot of follow-up. And he basically told me, he said that program was shut down because of funding. And this was a white major that told me this. And he said, Dr. Blanchard, he said, had the HOTS program been working during the time that MSD started, he said we would have caught that gentleman. He said we would have proactively identified him, because what they did was they went in into the schools and talked to the kids and talked to the teachers and found out who the top 10 offenders were. In other words, who's having the most problems, not for the purpose of locking them up, but for the purposes of identifying what kind of problems are they having. Okay, dad doesn't have a job, mom doesn't have a job, domestics at home, mental health. So they basically went in and they identified what the core issue was, not the symptom, but they identified that. And this is a white major telling me this, retired now, 30 some years, telling me that he believed in wraparound services over anything else.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because, and I want to tie into this as we draw to a close. I want to tie to this, and then I'll let you have the closing remarks. You're talking about the specifics of the top 10 offenders are the most identified as troublemakers. We're going to go find the source, because we understand that it's not just some type of aberration that they're behaving the way they're behaving, that there are some driving forces behind it. In my research of African-American adolescent and young adult male violence, I found 5 primary identifiers that were present in all offenders. When we're talking about violence, we're talking about extreme violence where someone's harmed or killed. There are 5 identifiers. Out of the 5 identifiers, 4 of them can be treated by wraparound services. The 5 identifiers, number 1 is the feeling of being disrespected. That can be dealt with in a way, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it a wraparound service because of the depth that it has to be dealt with. But the second one was the lack of proper socialization. You can have socialization programs as a wraparound service. That's what Black Men Lead is. So we found out that young Black males who were properly socialized were 4 times less likely to become criminalized, and 4 to 5 times less likely to be violent. The other 3 are major in being treated by wraparound services. And the next one is being a victim of violence. That needs to be addressed. That's a wraparound service. Witnessing violence, that's dealing with the environment. something else that's a wraparound service. And urban hassle.
Right.
Urban hassle, for those who don't know what it is, it's what kids experience in urban communities in the city, having to navigate through drug use and gang violence just to get to school. In places like the Midwest and the Northeast, L trains running all time of the night, rattling your house, your room, your apartment. Just having to navigate up the stairwell to get home through all kind of crap. Sirens and gunfire all times of the night. All that's urban hassle, and it literally puts them emotionally and mentally on edge and makes them more likely to react violently. All of those things can be dealt with, if nothing more than teaching them how to cope. So all of these mechanisms increase their chances of being successful in life, which includes student persistence. So to go back to that program, the HOTS program, that's exactly what's happening. We're coming in and seeing what's causing this rather than sitting up and just punishing the symptom. We're going to go to the cause, deal with it at the cause, and reduce the impact of the symptom and increase the chance of success. And so I'll let you close out with any closing notes, but I have shared several times the link to go actually check out the paper that we co-authored. And I'll make sure that it's in the description box of the video once we finish. But
well,
Doc, close us out.
Yeah, I would just say, Doc, anybody can do wraparound services. I mean, as an individual, I see people, our teachers do it every day, man. My wife happens to be a teacher, and we do it all the time. You know, after school programs, I frequently go out and get snacks and different things. So it can be as simple as that. It can be as simple as, officers do it from time to time, where they assist families with food. Any of us can do wraparound services, but we need to support those organizations, though, that have professionals that can do it. And school systems need to seek out the real grassroots organizations like yourself and others who I've talked to over the phone in the last couple of weeks after this article came out, who have contacted me and said, "Hey, we're doing this. What can you assist us on? How can we do this? I've even sent some of them blueprints for how to start a wraparound service organization, whether it's tutoring, food scarcity, mental health services, athletics. Athletics is also a wraparound service. You can use that to bring them in, and then you can teach them about, life skills and all of that. So all of this, I would just hope that people would read the article, look at where they can fit in at, if, everybody has their own role to play. If you have expertise, use it, seek out an organization to support either with your time or your talent or your dollars, because we really need it. Nobody's going to fix this but us. And we have two options. Either we're going to use wraparound services, and again, wraparound services is not a catch-all. It's not a cure-all. The cure-all would be to make families in our communities whole in the first place, right? That would be what we really want to do. But in the meantime, it can be a stopgap until we get to that point, to where we create our own businesses, which we should be doing, to when we can create our own institutions, including schools. Until we get to that point, we have to fill in where parents are falling short or where the school system is falling short. We need to fall in, whether that's going back to homeschooling, whether that's wraparound services to be used like where the Jewish community has the rites of passage, but we have to have the right folks that are doing it, the right folks to do it, because there's some folks that I wouldn't trust to do anything in our community. And unfortunately, it seems that a lot of those folks are the ones that are getting all the money.
Right. Unfortunately. We're going to get ready to get out of here. Before we leave, again, we are doing the work in the community. We could definitely use your help. The information to offer your support will be in the description box. It's in the description box of every video on the Black Voice channel. Also, if anyone has any questions or would want to refer someone for help, regardless of the scarcity of resources, we are not turning anyone away. We may not be able to get to you as quickly as we would like to, But we definitely want to know you're out there. And if we can't get to you immediately, maybe we know someone who can. But we need to be aware of what's going on in our community. One of the things that I have prided myself in doing is keeping my finger on the pulse of the community. It is a tiresome responsibility because it literally taps your emotions to the gill of watching people go through things and seeing our people suffer at such great magnitudes, and there being very little in the way of resources to reach out and help them. But neither Dr. Blanchard nor myself are those who quit, those who give up, those who turn around. My mantra has been for years, no surrender, no retreat. And so that's the way I live my life. Those who follow me on my inspirational channel where I do my work know that one of my sayings every day is I live my life on full so that I die on E. And that's how I approach every single day. I don't want to go to sleep with anything in my tank because I get a new tank in the morning, new tank full, so I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to sleep. I need to make sure I've given that day everything I have, because the 86,400 seconds that's in that 24-hour period will never be given to me again. And so if I leave it untapped, it's just there, wasted. And so this is the type of work ethic the people who are working in our community have to have. I have been, like I said, it has been a pleasure to know Dr. Blanchard for these years, and to see how we've grown and what we've gone through. And one of the things that Dr. Blanchard has said to me, and maybe he'll say a little something on it. I know we said we're going to get off. We do. We're a little over, but he used to always tell me that his fear was that no one would really truly know the magnitude of what I do and who I am until after I was gone. And my response each time was, I'm okay with that. I'm not here for the pat on the back, but it would be nice for people to recognize it and get behind it. You don't have to tell me I'm awesome. You don't have to pat me on the back. You don't have to get, I don't need an ego stroke, but I do need support to make sure the work that I am doing gets done. And here's the thing, and I'll say this, and I've done it. You can close us out, and we'll actually end. What you have to understand is not every person that we're out there helping are easy. Matter of fact, most of the people we're helping aren't easy to help. The more a person is embedded in trouble, the harder they are to help. You know, it ain't like you go out there and you say, okay, this is what you do, and you do this, this, and this, and I'm going to call you back tomorrow and see how you're doing. And you call back and say, I did it all, Doc. That's not how it works. You're out there wrestling with a person, trying to help a person, and you got most of the people saying, leave them alone. Let them go, forget it. Nobody wants to invest in them, but I see the future. I see the future in these babies. I see the future in what they can become, and I can't leave them behind, and it's my curse. So understand that there's work going on. This ain't like I wake up every day and go, man, this is going to be a walk in the park. No, I'm going to war every single day. You know, and you are too. And that's the thing is we hold each other up. So you can tell everybody goodbye or whatever you want to do, and then we're going to close out, man.
Well, Doc, I have since changed that, man. I mean, I feel like now the people that I'm trying to be recognized are my own people. As long as I'm respected by our grassroots people, and you're respected by our grassroots people, because the people that are, trending, those are not. I'm not trying to be one of those. If you're one of those, you're not working for us. You're working for somebody else, but it's not us.
Right.
So that's how I'll end on that. As long as I'm recognized. When I take my last breath, man, as long as I'm recognized by our people, and that's all that matters, man. I'm not trying to be the in person or the flavor of the month, so to speak.
Right. And on that note, man, we're out of here. For everybody that stopped by, for everybody that's going to watch this on the replay, act accordingly. The link to actually go read the paper, and it's not a long paper. But it definitely gets to the point of what we're talking about as far as wraparound services versus policing in our schools and what that means and how we can act. and the need for wraparound services. Look, go read it, go check it out. We're out of here. Thank you for stopping by. I want to thank Dr. Blanchard for giving us some of his time. On that note, we're out. Have a great day.